Yeah. Hello and welcome to the India Hangout. We are talking about black money. A special investigation team has been finally put together to get back the black money stashed abroad. The question we are asking, of course, is that likely now, that considering that this has not really happened so far? Also try and understand what are the legal technical issues involved in getting that black money stashed overseas, even given the fact that this government may go after this in a far more strong way. Ayaz Memon is here with me, and MR Venkatesh, chartered accountant and author, is going to be joining us from Chennai in a moment. So, Ayaz, before we come to the black money being stashed abroad, so is this a campaign promise, you think, that it's being used to demonstrate intent? And
yeah, I think the corruption aspect was something which was leveraged most brilliantly and most vehemently by the BJP and the NDA. May have been started by the AAP or the India Against Corruption movement, but the expectations of the people really stem from that, in that they wanted to change from a corrupt government to a non-corrupt one. And in a sense, though it's not promised, there is some mention of it in the manifesto, I'm not so sure, but in a sense this is one of the promises that people expect the new government to fulfill. And the formation of the SIT tells you that, at least for now, it seems that the government is very serious, because the kind of people who've been incorporated into this SIT is very, very
and it's going to be headed by a retired Supreme Court Judge M.B. Shah. This also comes on the heels of a writ petition that was filed by Ramjet Malani in 2011. Which of course didn't reach the logical conclusion it seems to have reached now, and there's been a white paper along the way. MR Venkatesh joins us. MR, thank you very much for joining us. So tell us, when we talk about recovering this black money that's stashed abroad, and now of course the government is moving on it, what are we actually defining the problem as, and what are we trying to get back? Is it illegal money, black money, unaccounted for? What is it exactly?
First, we have to understand that the term black money by and large denotes money on which you don't pay tax. Probably that's a very wrong nomenclature in the context on what we are talking about. Ideally, the term should be red money, which means corrupt money stashed abroad, wherein the source itself is a problem. Suppose you you sell your house for 50 lakhs and get another 20 lakhs as cash, and you don't pay tax on the cash component, it is black money. But supposing you sell heroin and get 70 lakhs, that heroin sales by itself is it's a doubtful commodity, and that's illegal. So we are talking about money stashed through corruption, arms dealing. You have kidney racket. You have various sort of other things that's going on in this country. You have also funds coming into the country, which is like propelling NGOs to stand up against the government, stand up against create certain movements. All these things have to be investigated. So it's not merely by using the term black money, though it may be a term that may find resonance with the common man. Actually, the term that should be used is red money. So by altering the definition, I'm not only playing with semantics, I'm making a very purposive statement here. And that is where, and be that as it may, the government has not decided on this SIT. This is an SIT that has been decided by the Honorable Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court mandated it way back in 2011. The then UPA government was not very happy with this. They went on a review. The review took 2 years. And only last month, the Supreme Court came out with a very clear instructions. Yes, we should go ahead, overrule the review thing, and they said no, we want the SIT to be formed. Now the SIT has been formed today. I think things will move forward on certain specific issues.
As I understand it, it's about ill-gotten wealth rather than wealth which you may have got but you have not declared. Is that a correct reading of the situation?
No, it is not the wealth that you have got or not declared. It is not that.
Yes.
You cannot declare. You cannot declare, for instance, I'm just saying, supposing you got some money under, say, 2G as a kickback. Suppose you were a minister who gave this 2G spectrum. You could not have declared and said that I got 100 crores or 200 crores as kickbacks. So obviously this would have been money either received in through the Hawala route abroad, or it would have been stashed abroad using certain other means. So this is not merely that you could have declared. By declaring, you would have shot down yourself on your foot. So these are the monies that are stashed abroad. These are not the chillers that we are talking about.
Right. So Emma, what's your sense of the quantum that we are looking at?
See, if you are going to ask for any ballpark figure, I think it's going to be very dangerous. As a chartered accountant, if I have to audit a figure, you are pulling me into a quagmire. I won't hazard a guess.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so let's not get into the figure. I mean, there are several figures which have been quoted, including I think the government accepted figure is 2.1 billion. The CBI director AP Singh in February 2012 said $500 billion stashed abroad. Of course, this could be both tax evasion as well as illegal or ill-gotten wealth. It could be many things. So let's talk about how this could potentially come back, Emad. You know, we've seen how the United States government has gone after some of the Swiss banks and forced them to come to the table, so to speak, to recover tax evaded or money that was evaded by way of tax by US nationals. What are the possible routes that we could look at here as this SIT gets going?
I'm no great fan of Mr. Chidambaram, let me make it very clear. But on money laundering, he scores an absolute 0 out of 100 when it comes to this exercise. Why do I say that? The act was enacted, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act was enacted in the year 2005. We are in 2014, 9 years have elapsed. Not one single conviction out of 9 years in this act. This shows the lackadaisical way in which we have dealt with the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Now, unless you charge your own citizens, unless you say here is a list of A, B, C, D, E, these are the people who we have investigated. They have got the wealth abroad, and these are most likely to have done some homework. You come out with some lot of investigation. Then you say these people have stashed their wealth in, say, Swiss bank here, or in Deutsche Bank there, or in some other bank, XYZ bank. Then the Swiss authorities have enacted a law called Swiss Illegal Wealth Restitution Act, SIVRA. So now you go to them under that act, say that here got X who has done this mistake in this country. We have cognized that mistake. Now what the Swiss are telling, don't tell us, hey, you have any Indian accounts, please give it to us, we are ready to give you money. No, Swiss are not going to do that. You have to do the homework, you have to nail the people here. Unfortunately, we have not nailed a single person. And the only person we got some clue was the Hassan Ali case. And we have given it a decent burial in the last 4 years. So we have to look
at the Hassan Ali case seemed to be completely, I mean, there's a huge gap between what the authorities were claiming was the money that he had and the actual evidence that was available. It was almost like the whole thing was a red herring.
Whatever be it, please understand, on the floor of the House in August 2009, the Minister of State for Finance, Mr. Pandimanickam, has made a statement that 72,000 crores has to come from Mr. Hassan Ali Khan, Mrs. Hassan Ali Khan and Tapuria. Now, after which we have not heard any concrete statement in the floor of the House why this whole evidence fell through, or why did the evidence not stand in any court of law. And have we tried them in any court of law? No. To my understanding, no court has cognized this evidence and said this. This was only an administrative decision. If that were so, eyebrows are definitely will be raised.
Okay. Right, Emad, so we'll come back to the Hassan Ali question in a moment. We've got a couple of questions coming in and let me pose the first one to you. The first, it says, is this the most important issue to be taken up so quickly by the new government, or is it a way of going after associates of of the previous government?
Should I answer that?
Yeah, this is for you.
Hello?
Yeah, this is for you, Emad.
Hello?
Yeah.
Should I answer?
Yes, Emad, go ahead.
Okay, see, as I said, this was not a decision of the government. This was a decision of the Supreme Court implemented by the government. So I think the Supreme Court had given them 1 week's time last week, and the 1 week was supposed to end this week. So I think the government had no choice but to announce the SIT.
The other question, MR, is what is the process here on? So, I mean, how do you expect the process to play out? Now, this SIT is a very multifaceted team. There are people from different parts of the government or arms of government, and they'll all pursue different leads. Your point was that this is, we have to do the homework domestically, right? So, that assumes or presumes that there is information, data, audit trails, all of that possible within this country to track money that is stashed overseas. Take us through what the mechanics could be like.
For instance, the UBS case. The UBS had given a CD. In fact, 2 of the employees had taken a CD to France from Switzerland, and out of which the French people found out that there were people across so many countries, and there were around 120,000 names. And common names they sifted, and they found that there were around 800 Indian names. Now the CD has been handed over to India. Now these 800 people have, we have not started directly investigating them from the angle of prevention of money laundering. We have only asked them to, they have gone to the income tax department and filed an income tax petition, and they are trying to escape from the income tax by paying the 30% plus interest and other things. But we must try them under the PMLA. The PMLA is the more potent of the act, which has got a criminal dimension, and this is where I think the previous government failed. Now, if you investigate these 800 people, how did they get so much money? And if you go through these, out of this 802 people whose documents were released by Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, you will find very surprisingly the brazen manner in which they had stashed the wealth, the brazen manner in which they got the money outside India. You could call HSBC officer in Zurich, and hey presto, here in New Delhi you will get a person who collects your cash, and instantly the amount is credited in dollar, yen or yuan in Zurich, and you can use that money wherever you want. And whenever you wanted the money, you could again dial up that gentleman in Zurich. Again, you find that the money is the physical cash is made available to you in New Delhi. These are very important trails. Numbers are there. Phone numbers are there. You can go and do this. Your Department of Revenue Intelligence, your PMLA, your income tax, all these people can assimilate their evidences. Then go to the Swiss people. Look, I have got Mr. X, who constantly is dialing this number. We have got his own statement made under 131. This has been recorded before a magistrate. This magistrate has ordered us to recover this money, do the entire process of law in this country, then go with a letter rogatory to the Swiss authorities and say these 800 people have parked their money in this account, in Zurich, in your HSBC account. Please let us see what you have to say on this. Then you may have to file this with the cantonment court in Zurich. It's a long process. But unless you don't do your homework well, step by step, you don't think that this can be done. But now that this is under a Supreme Court judge, my confidence is all these trial courts and other things will not give excessive adjournments. Perhaps there may be one adjournment, perhaps two adjournments, and then perhaps you could also set up a special court in Delhi to monitor these type of cases, a specialized court that with a specialized trial, just like what we are doing for 2G. All these things will help us to trace the nitty-gritties of these people very easily.
The question, I think the logical question is, do you think that there has been neglect, as you mentioned, lackadaisical approach, or is there complicity of the highest authorities, which perhaps is the impression that a lot of people have got?
I don't have any evidence to suggest complexity, though there is a very thin line between being lackadaisical and being complicit in a particular way. But at this point of time, the charge will be lackadaisical. Probably more evidences, we can perhaps sit down and discuss whether they were complicit in the whole affair.
Emad, if I were to go by what you said, and which is that a lot of action could have been taken, and it is really roll up sleeves and go after each address, each phone number, get in touch with the Swiss authorities, the banks, HSBC in this question with those 782 names and all of that. Now, if we were to look at, let's say, the action that's been taken in the 2G scam, for instance, or let's say the coal scam. Now, it would appear that in some areas there has been at least some move towards action, albeit by the Supreme Court, if not by the government, right? So why has that not happened in the case of going after black money potentially stashed abroad?
I have to respectfully disagree with you. Even in the 2G scam, out of the potential loss that ranges between 60,000 crores and 176,000 crores, we have traced the money trail of 200 crores, out of which only yesterday, on 26th, the charge sheet was filed by the ED in the trial court. Just the charge sheet, 6 years we have elapsed since the date of the crime on which you filed the charge sheet. This is despite the Supreme Court monitoring it. Now to the second leg of the question. Now, whether things will get accelerated from here or whether there were some more action that can be possible in some other. Yes, we have to go after several of these scams. The scam did happen. There is a murdered body. The body has been completely chiseled. We know there is a dead body, but we don't know who has done it, for which we require the coercive investigative arm of the government to work. That is why this SIT.
So, MR, again, I mean, if I were to play the devil's advocate here, why is it that, what are the, I mean, I know it's a new government, we all believe that this government is more determined to go after issues and will focus on execution and so on. You know, the 782 Indians, many of them are prominent businessmen or businessmen in general, have managed to in some ways stay clear and protect themselves in some way or the other. Why would that prospect change with this new government, which is also in some ways dependent or has some kind of relationship with businessmen, purely as businessmen? I'm not suggesting anything more.
See, I think it's a very loaded question. Though you have not said something, but you have said a lot of things. so I for one would believe getting after the black money depends on only one person, that's the Prime Minister of this country. Okay. If the Prime Minister has a spine and has ramrod spine, we will get some money. I'm not saying this 500 billion or 1000 billion. I'm not hazarding a guess, as I said. But if we have to get back our money, whether it is this black money which is parked outside by businessmen for whatever reason, or if it is a red money as I defined, if it is by some corrupt politician for a kickback outside India, I think both this money need to come back to India. For the businessman, if there is a very clear source that it was basically a tax evasion, let the tax law take its own course. Let the FEMA take its own course. If it is somebody who is what we call as politically exposed person, PEP, and in such a case, I think the Money Laundering Act must be pressed into service and must be made extraordinarily severe, so that you can't do away with corruption across the country. But wherever you get hold of corruption, wherever you get hold of the corrupt, you must make such a very stringent example that out of punishing the one or two that you lay hands on, the others must desist from doing any further adventure.
So, when we were growing up, that's a long time back, there was an amnesty scheme that people who had stashed away black money or wealth which was not declared, they could make a one-time declaration and come clean. Is there a possibility of that kind of a thing happening now?
See, the problem is in 1997, if you recall, when the VDIS, the last VDIS was made out by Mr. P. Chidambaram, he filed an affidavit in the Supreme Court when there was an objection to the scheme, stating inter alia that he would not, or the government of India would not come out with any scheme in future. VDIS 97 is the last scheme on the books. Be that as it may, there are several sections within the Income Tax Act, both in Pranab's regime and Mr. Chidambaram's regime. We have allowed this black money to come back into India by paying a small profit, a small tax. I think that may continue. That itself is an amnesty. I think if people are smart, they can take care of their black money parked abroad by paying that 15% tax and bringing it back to India.
So, Ahmad, again, let me put this question to you as an auditor and a chartered accountant. How would you rate the complexity of this task versus other tasks in the broader anti-corruption initiative or effort?
This is a very, very complex task. Let us not say that it is going to be something that is up there in the wall and we have to just pick up. No way. It's going to be like chasing the needle in the haystack. So we require a lot of multidimensional agencies. We require huge amount of cross coordination between investigative arm, then the ROC, the income tax, then various other agencies. For instance, the Enforcement Directorate today is only staffed to the extent of 40%. It is very understaffed. Whereas you in the income tax, if you find you have salary circle, you have Rashtra Bhasha circle, you have TDS circles, so many things. You have to actually bring about excellent officers from the income tax, revenue departments into the Enforcement Directorate, strengthen it, and also this team, so that the SIT is not only, you don't expect the Lordships, Mr. Shah, to go and sit down and do the investigating job. He is only going to give broad direction. You require officers. Finally, this is going to be driven by officers who are going to be intelligent. This is going to be driven by officers who are going to be smart. This is going to be driven by officers who have got understanding of company law, how corporates work, how money is laundered, Prevention of Corruption Act, how various things happen, how we are able to provide evidences, criminal procedure code, then your whole range of other commercial transactions that happen. So all these things, I don't think many people have this understanding of this entire gamut of laws. So it's going to be very tough to find them, and with integrity. On top of this, the person who is going to handle this must be with absolute integrity. So it's not only competence, it's integrity. It's going to be a long haul for all of us. But this is a first step and a welcome step. So let us not count the chickens before they hatch. But this is a very good step, and I see that if this actually rolls over in the positive way, 2 to 3 years we could start getting some money back into India.
So there is a skeptical point of view also that this might just be a lot of what is now in media parlance is called atmospherics. It's a new government. It's trying to show intent, and therefore all this is just gets brownie points. But as you mentioned, the buck stops with the Prime Minister. Unless he has a spine of steel, then this might just fizzle out.
See, again I tell you, this is going to be the reputation of Prime Minister Modi. If he fails, this would be one of the biggest failure of Mr. Modi. And if he succeeds, it will be the biggest success of Mr. Modi. So this is a high risk, high reward game that Mr. Modi has embarked on. But I tell you again, this is not Mr. Modi's decision. This decision was trusted on the government by the Supreme Court. So in a way, it is that the Supreme Court has ordered this, and he had to only follow the diktats of the Honorable Court. And this is only, he has to only pray that the entire team succeeds and they bring about some qualitative change in terms of getting back some money, so that he can at least stand up in the ramparts of the Red Fort in 2016. I'm making it very clear, 2 years down the line, and say that, hey, look, our team has done something. We have got a few hundred million here, a few billion there, and that I think would be the first step in recovering back this money.
Right. So, Emma, last set of questions. I think this is an important point that you've made, and let me build on that a little bit. There is a demonstration effect if there is some success in recovering some of this black money that has been stashed abroad, because as you said, this is a multidisciplinary effect with different arms of government. They all have to work together. There has to be direction and so on. So what's the larger takeaway then if we have some success in terms of what we can achieve as a country, and what else could we do if there is some success in this?
See, the most important thing is at least there are 8 or 10 scams that have happened in the last 10 years. Let me say the Madhu Koda, then you have this 2G scam, then you have the Colgate, then you have the Sharda chit fund, then you have the allegation that Mr. Maran ran a telephone exchange in his own house. So all these things, if you add and look at it, if the government is able to focus on these, or the task force, the SIT is able to pinpoint on these 10 or 12 major scams that has hit this country in the last 10 years, and able to achieve success in 2 or 3 of them, I think that would have a huge demonstrable effect. Remember, let me hasten to add here, 2G, we have got a trail of only 200 crores money. I am not ready to believe that Mr. Raja was so naive, if he was corrupt, that he would give the entire spectrum free of cost but take only 200 crores as kickback. For that, he would not have taken anything. Let me be very clear about it. He would not have taken anything and allowed the whole thing, because this 200 crores happened to be within India, and it was by check, and it was audited. It was figuring prominently in the balance sheet of 3 companies, and that is why this whole thing came up. Otherwise, I don't think so that even in the 2G scam, we could have laid out, you could have got any payoffs back to Mr. Raja's account. Even that is very convoluted at this point in time. So the longer point I'm trying to make is, even the 2G case, the bribe component investigation is incomplete at this point in time.
Right. So some comments and questions, MR, before we close. The first one says, the comment that is, I agree with Mr. Venkatesh that homework is not being done. One just needs to observe the high value cash transactions that happen at luxury stores, jewelry stores, travel, etc. The other question is, okay, this is to do with, this is should the government have then announced it in this manner, because this obviously draws media attention and that may not be good. The third point is, several diamond merchants, this is a question now, several diamond merchants were implicated in the last few lists that have been floating, many of whom also have residency in countries like Belgium. Would you think they were soft targets?
Obviously they were soft targets, and that's why they were caught into the net. But diamonds, by their sheer value and that they can be hidden and smuggled across countries, offer a perfect source apart from gold for squaring off your Hawala account. So diamond and diamond merchants are usually the prime targets are in any money laundering exercises, and that happens quite frequently. So that's not a big brainer, and no big brainer, and I think that will go on happening. And they were not targeted, but they were easy pickings.
Right. So, Emar, last point, what's your sense ahead? I mean, this is a larger question. I mean, like you said, there are many economic crimes that have to be chased down, and there are economic challenges as well for the country as a whole. How will all this get prioritized in coming days? Do you think we'll have the bandwidth to do it, and how does the general future for this this side of the world look?
Sir, I should say this is the brilliant question, whether we have the bandwidth. That's the bigger point I'm trying to make. And let us assume tomorrow Swiss Bank says, here is your $1 trillion, take it. Now, if that comes in, how will the RBI handle it? And the RBI and Food Corporation of India have only known to handle shortages. They have never known to handle surpluses. If $1 trillion flows into our country, I think the rupee will suddenly go to 10, what would happen? Or even 5 to $1. So all these things we may have to also slowly start creating, smaller committees to understand what could be the consequences on the Indian economy should this money start coming in. How should we absorb this money? How should we actually take care of this money flowing into the country? How should we ensure that the rupee doesn't appreciate dramatically? All these type of things have to be calibrated, and so this is not only an investigative task. This is also, there is an economic dimension. There is a crime dimension. There is not only a crime dimension within India. It's a cross-border crime dimension. Remember, when I started my school, I heard this letter rogatory being presented to the Swiss authorities, Swiss Cantonment Court, on the Bofors issue. Even today, we have not been able to enforce that letter rogatory. Now, the reason for not doing it may be political. That could be entirely a process. But there is also a lack of competency in handling these things. How well we can establish an Attorney General's office in Switzerland, Indian Attorney General's office with lot of trained staff over there as a part of our diplomatic initiative to ensure that Switzerland allows an Attorney General's office there, so that we don't have to actually rely on their lawyers. We can also have our own lawyers, train them, have a dialogue with Switzerland. Switzerland is ready, in my view. Honestly, Switzerland is ready. But we cannot say that, throw a telephone directory at their face and say, please check whether these names, out of these names, whether you have got some names sounding Guptas and Sharmas and Subramaniams, and please send that money. No, that is not going to happen. We have to do our homework. Our homework has been zilch. We have to start there. But for that, we don't have competency. The reason for lack of competency is that the Prime Minister till date was not very keen. Today, we have a new beginning, new Prime Minister. And there is also a greater awareness, luckily or otherwise, I would say the Supreme Court is going to monitor this. Even the Prime Minister today, if he doesn't want to do or back off, as one of your questions suggested vaguely, that it is impossible for Mr. Modi to back off from this whole exercise, because this is now a Supreme Court monitored case. Now, Supreme Court monitored through a sitting judge. So these are very, very positive steps. Let us not look at it in any way negatively. Let us put our best foot forward. Let us help this SIT. Let us see how the SIT frames its terms and conditions of working. Obviously, it must come out with a charter or some declaration how it proposes to work, whether it will have open dialogue with people, also take some suggestions, take some inputs, take some clues. All these things we have to look into it, and then only we may come to a conclusion whether this is functioning. As I said, nothing dramatic in the next 1 year, and if 2016, if we get a billion or two, I'll be happy.
Okay, that's a good note. Emar, thank you very much. I know you've joined in from a very distant place and you're not in Chennai right now. Thank you so much for taking time off and speaking to us. So there you are, Ayaz, the prospect that this government may go after something for various reasons, including demonstration. And of course, if the lot of money comes, then among other things, the rupee will appreciate.
Yes, and if I go to England for a cricket tour, the pound will not be $90 or $100.
Yeah.
It might be half of that, so that will be a great thought. But as he said, let's not be overly expectant that this may happen in the next 3 weeks, 100 days. He's giving 2 years as a target or a time frame.
But importantly, I think, as he said, this will also demonstrate the ability to get so many different agencies, and therefore government working, or a part of government working to go after an objective. In this case, being recovery of black money.
It shows a kind of a mission that this government may be on, in the larger perspective. So this is one area where,
and whether they will be on it.
Whether they will be on it.
Yeah, and whether they'll have the bandwidth. We'll of course see. Thanks very much for joining us on the India Hangout.